Good evening. I'm Nisa Petrilli.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Steve Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Roman.
And this is the On the Sports Lines College Football Preview. If we're approaching the end of August, then it's almost time for the boys of Saturday to kick off another season of college football. We'll look at potential Final Four teams, Heisman Trophy candidates who don't play quarterback, games that will have playoff implications, top flight programs with QB issues, and much more. As always, we want to hear from you. So email us at fanspeak@onthesportslines.com, send your tweets to @onthesportslines, and your posts to facebook.com/onthesportslines. We just may read them on the show.
We will, Sean.
Well, the college football playoff was a critical, if not resounding, success in its first season.
Definitely.
The selection committee had to go all the way to the final game of the regular season to determine the inaugural Final Four. We're going to take a look at 4 teams we believe will be there at the end of 2015. Sean, who's your pick?
The Ohio State Buckeyes. Can anybody pick against them whatsoever? What Urban Meyer has done with this program in 3 years, coming out of the bat with an undefeated season when they were not bowl eligible, then winning all their games up until the last 2, and then winning the first year of the college football playoff by
As a 4 seed.
Yes, by a 4 seed. You didn't even want them in. I don't think you wanted
Neither
TCU.
of us wanted them in.
But I wanted them. They got there. They beat both Alabama and Oregon. They did it decisively, and things are just looking up for Ohio State. They have 4 starters coming back on their offensive line, which is poetically called the Slobs. They have the greatest quarterback situation that any college football team could ever dream of. This is the team, if they played one of those terrible Jacksonville or Detroit Lion teams, they would give them a run for the money because they have NFL-ready players at every level that could have went there last year. They have the best linebacking core in the country. They also have Joey Bosa not playing
Best
game
D-lineman.
1. Absolutely incredible. This team is just going to be one of the greatest college football teams that ever existed. Last year, when they weren't even being watched because they lost to Virginia Tech on September 6th, they were putting up 500 yards of offense a game, and nobody was noticing them.
And it didn't matter who was at quarterback either.
No, it didn't. So Ohio State Buckeyes, I mean, I'm usually picking the outliers and the outsiders, but I'm going with the behemoth this year.
You're Captain Obvious this year.
Yes, you are.
Steven.
Well, I'm going to be Captain Unobvious for a change, and what I'm going to do is pick a team that Jay and I are very familiar with, and that's USC.
Go Trojans.
Now, here's the thing with USC. We know they finished at 7-5 last year, not one of their better years, but
That's why this is a great
right.
pick.
However, when you look at the offensive and defensive lines, they haven't changed at all from last year. That's one reason I like their chances. Secondly, they have Cody Kessler at quarterback, who is without question one of the better college quarterbacks in the game. And I think the other reason is when you look at Sarkisian's offense, you have to figure that was his first year with his team as a head coach. The team knows him better. They'll be better prepared. And a lot of the games they lost last year were very close games.
Yeah.
And one other factor we have to look at, no Marcus Mariota to deal with this time, and no Brett Hundley. Go Trojans.
That's true. Well, I'm going to be looking at a team that was this close to making it last year, but got nosed out in the end, and that is the Horned Frogs of Texas Christian. Went 12-1, 8-1 in the Big 12, and won the Peach Bowl by blowing out Ole Miss 42-3. They returned senior quarterback Trevon Boykin, who's a Heisman Trophy candidate, coming off a season where he set single school records for passing yards and touchdowns. The former wide receiver has become a true dual threat quarterback, 700-plus yards on the ground. He leads an offense that averaged almost 47 points a game, number 2 in the nation behind rival Baylor, who they have to beat this year. Boykin returns his number 1 receiver, Josh Doxson, his number 2 receiver, Colby Listenby, and his leading running back, Aaron Green, who averaged 7 yards a pop. That offense overall returns 10 starters. Gary Patterson has to replace 6 starters on defense from a unit that was number 1 in the Big 12. only gave up 23 points a game. They do get 3 of their defensive line starters back, including defensive end James McFarland, who led them in sacks. The big question is whether or not freshman Mike Freeze can replace departed Big 12 player, the defensive player of the year, Mike Dawson, in a 4-2-5 defense. 3 underclassmen will start in the back 7. I'll tell you this, though. The offense is going to put up enough points while the defense figures itself out. And I believe when it's all said and done, TCU is going to be one of the last.
Do you think
4.
they're going to skate to an undefeated season up to that point?
No, because they have to play Baylor.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I got to go with Alabama. And as much as I hate them as a Gator fan, which you all
Join the
know,
party.
Yes.
this team is just in the running every single year.
Yeah,
it's like
they are.
ridiculous. And it seems like whenever they lose a key player to the NFL, they fill that position with another great player, and they've done that again. They have one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in the whole country. They have great linebackers and D-backs. The defense is totally stacked, no questions there at all. And I know they do have a little bit of a quarterback competition going on, but I feel like they have a few good choices there, and whoever they end up going with, led by Lane Kiffin as offensive coordinator, is going to do a good job.
You just got to hand the ball to Derrick Henry and get out of his way.
And I'm surprised. I mean, if I had another pick, I would have picked their big rival in Auburn with Jeremy Johnson taking over. They're both very highly ranked.
They are a lot
That's
of
another
people's
good
top
I was
4.
thinking that too, but I just Alabama's just always there, and I just felt like I had to go.
Always
with
are.
them. But I hope you're right. Actually, I hope you're right. Well, guys, 2 things are synonymous with college football in August: the release of the preseason rankings and the start of the Heisman Watch. We're all aware of the quarterbacks who will be in the discussion: Michigan State's Connor Cook, Mississippi State's Dak Prescott, and whoever Urban Meyer anoints this starter at Ohio State top the list. With that in mind, we're going to look at 3 guys at other positions who should also be in the conversation. Steve, who's your guy?
Well, I'm going with Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. What this guy did his last 3 games was incredible. When you look at the fact that he ran for 220 yards against Wisconsin, 230 against Alabama, and then finished his college season with 240 yards against Oregon, you have to go with this guy.
I'm with him.
He has literally come from nowhere as now one of the serious Heisman candidates, and whether he and Cardell Jones or whoever they decide to go with at quarterback, which may be Barrett, you have to go with this guy. He's a tremendous player, and he's got a couple of years left at Ohio State.
I just worry that Braxton Miller's going to get a lot of his carries, and they're going to share a lot of yards.
Miller's been transferred to wide receiver, so maybe
but
not.
that doesn't mean that he's going to be a traditional wide receiver.
The way they run their offense,
whoever
you're right.
plays quarterback could steal votes from Elliott.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Nick Chubb, the running back out of Georgia. Now, here's the interesting thing about this guy. He replaced Todd Gurley when he went down with an injury, who wound up being drafted 10th by the Rams.
Yes, he did.
And as a backup, as an injury replacement, rushed for 1,547 yards and 14 touchdowns as a true freshman. He's going to be the focal point of their offense this year. That's the good news. Being the focal point of the offense for Georgia is also the bad news because they have inexperienced options at quarterback.
Yeah.
Redshirt sophomore Bryce Ramsey and junior Fatam Bata and Grayson Lambert, a transfer from Virginia, are vying for the guy who takes the snaps. Opposing defenses are going to be game planning against Chubb, first down, second down, even third down. That being said, if he can somehow manage to top last year's numbers, he should make it to New York. But with running backs like Ezekiel Elliott of Ohio State and Derrick Henry of Alabama and Leonard Fournette of LSU in the conversation, he's got a lot of competition at his own position
He sure
for Heisman
does.
votes.
Sean?
I will go with Scooby Wright from Arizona. And you might be saying, whoa, now you're really picking a wacky pick, a defensive player.
who is
but,
that?
I mean, if you
You
actually...
do this every year.
He does.
But if you look at the defensive player last year who got the most Heisman votes, it's the guy I'm picking. He came in 9th. And, I mean, I've seen the superlatives that the press has thrown at this guy. One of the greatest defensive seasons in the history of college football last year with 163 tackles and 14 sacks. And the play that you might remember is Arizona did upset Oregon early in the year. And on that last play of the game, there was one guy who broke through the line, tackled Mariota, caused a fumble, and then pounced on the ball. And that was Scooby Wright. So take a look out for him. I think he is going to be your Heisman Trophy winner.
Wow.
Wow.
We will see.
We will see.
I loved your excitement and
Yes,
enthusiasm.
so did I.
Well, as we noted in the previous segment, quarterbacks usually top the list of Heisman candidates, and for good reason, which is why these 3 high-profile programs find themselves in a bit of a quandary, having to figure out who will be their starter at the game's most prominent position. Jay, start us off. Which team are you looking at?
I'm looking at Oregon, which for the first time in what seems like a million years, but it's only 3, has to replace Marcus Mariota, the 2015 Heisman winner, who's now taking snaps for the Tennessee Titans. 2 possibilities here. Junior Jeff Locke knows the offense very well after backing up Mariota for the last 2 years, but he's only really played in garbage time. He's only attempted 41 passes in 2 years. Came into camp as number 1, if nothing in name only. The other guy that everybody likes is Eastern Washington transfer Vernon Adams, who's hoping to get the most out of his Russell Wilson-like graduate student season. Put up very impressive numbers, Eastern Washington. Over 10,000 passing yards, over 1,200 rushing yards. Second in what amounts to Division I AA, getting run up twice for their Heisman Award, which is the Peyton Award. But also, he had 2 games against Pac-12 teams over the last 2 years, and he lit them up. 518 yards of total offense, 6 TDs, and a 49-46 upset of Oregon State in 13. 475 yards passing, 7 touchdowns in a 59-52 loss to Washington last year. His quarterback rating in those 2 games, 97.2 out of 100. Now, the Wilson comparisons here are appropriate. They're both similar in stature and style and in game style. Now, if he can replicate what Wilson did in his singular graduate student season at Wisconsin, Oregon's offense is going to be in very good hands, and Pac-12 opponents will be cringing. And P.S., just for irony, Oregon opens the season at Eastern Washington, so Adams may be going against his old teammates.
Wow. Well, I'm going to be looking at Alabama because Blake Sims is no longer their quarterback, as we know, and he, by the way, wasn't even drafted by the NFL. So there you go. He's not exactly the best quarterback on the planet. However, they have 3 guys right now that any one of these 3 could be the starter. You're looking at a guy named Jacob Coker, who they actually say might be as talented, if not more so, than A.J. McCarron, and a little more athletic. The second guy you can look at is a guy named David Cornwell. This guy actually projects as a potential NFL quarterback in size and strength, so he's got a chance.
Got the measurables.
And the third guy is a guy named Blake Barnett, and I really don't know a lot about him, but he's also a potential starter. But with their defense, I mean...
And Derrick Henry.
And Derrick Henry, how great a quarterback do you have to be?
Exactly.
Just hand the ball off to
and get
Derrick
out of his way.
Exactly.
Let your defense win the game.
You got it.
Sean, back to the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Braxton Miller, JT, Cardell Jones. The Jets should have one of these guys, and they would be happy right now. This is the greatest problem you could actually ever imagine. What is Urban Meyer going to do? He's not telling everybody. He says, well, before we're going to line up again Virginia Tech on the 7th of September, I'll make my decision by then. Which makes me remember one of Nisa's favorite teams, probably the 2006 Urban Meyer coached Florida Gators. That was a team where Urban Meyer had 2 quality quarterbacks, in Chris Leak and Tim Tebow, and he used them situationally. So Chris Leak was ultimately the leader of that particular team because he was the thrower while Tebow was more of a guy who could rush. So that's what I think they're going to do here, especially against Virginia Tech, because J.T. Barrett played Virginia Tech. That was his absolute worst game last year. And I think that was because of the type of defense. His running game just did not match up that well. So look what Cardell Jones did when he played Wisconsin, 59-0. And then in the playoffs against Alabama, very different team. Success at every level. I think they have to, and they will start off with Cardell Jones week 1.
That's what I think.
I do not know what they're going to do week 2 after that, because then they're going to have a lot of opponents they are absolutely going to run over, and it doesn't matter if they use a quarterback at all, because they're going to win those games up until the end of November when they play Michigan State and Michigan.
Here's what makes it easier for Urban Meyer. Barrett has 2 more years.
Wow.
That's true.
Amazing.
With the college football playoff now determining the Final Four who'll play for the national title, every game is meaningful. We're going to take a look at 3 that could have playoff implications. Jay, lead off. Which game are you looking at?
I'm looking at TCU Baylor on Black Friday, November 27. Now, last season...
That's tough to do at this point.
But you know what? Here's why. Last season, these 2 schools played one of the most exciting and ultimately controversial games of the year. Baylor came from 21 down with 11 minutes left to win 61-58 on a time-expiring field goal. That loss cost TCU the outright Big 12 title, and in the eyes of the selection committee, lost them a spot in the inaugural Final Four. These two teams finished number 1 and number 2 in the nation in scoring, both in the top 10 in passing and top 10 in top 40 in rushing. Both teams returned their number 1 running back, then top 3 wide receivers. Now Baylor has to break in a new quarterback. Sean Russell steps in for Bryce Petty. TCU returns a Heisman candidate in Trevon Boykin. This year's game is in Fort Worth, which gives TCU the home field advantage, which may not amount to much, as 3 of the last 4 games have been decided by 3 points or less. 3 points may be all it takes, though, this year. Even if the two teams put up a combined 119 points again. There's not going to be any co-champs in the conference this year. There are rules to prevent that. And this game on Black Friday is likely going to decide who the Big 12 sends to the big dance. If they send anybody, it's going to be the one to watch.
And you think Baylor is going to prevail in that game, don't you?
I got to tell you, I give a slight edge to TCU now, only because they have a returning starter quarterback where Baylor does not.
That's what I heard.
And the home, it's a TCU home game. That's right now. We'll see.
The game I'm looking at is Michigan State, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Just say the
I
game.
mean, how good a
I'm
game
looking
will
at
be.
No, the game is Michigan versus Ohio State.
yeah.
You know that.
Yeah, that's the other big game. But this game will be almost as good as that. When you look at the fact, first of all, as we talked about Ohio State having not 1, not 2, but 3 guys who can play quarterback,
Yep.
all of whom are really good. And Michigan State also has a great quarterback who will be a Heisman Trophy candidate as well.
Oh, yeah.
Both teams play great defense, and we know Ohio State has Ezekiel Elliott, who is an amazing running back. Michigan State has younger guys at running back, but still, I think this will be a very close game and a real test for Ohio State, maybe the first one they'll have all year.
Yeah.
And with Urban Meyer at the controls, what a great game.
They got Penn State before that and Virginia Tech.
That could be a good game, too.
Otherwise, I expect Ohio State to cruise until last
This
2
game,
games.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, you guys were picking late games, and in college football, I think you're looking too far ahead. I really strained myself looking for an earlier game in September to say, if one of these two teams win this particular game, that team will go on a different path than the other, where both have a chance of that playoff spot right now. And that is why I picked Notre Dame against Georgia Tech. Now, they went in different directions last year. Notre Dame started out very strong, and they were headed towards that selection committee for one of the 4 votes. They did very well, and they, in my mind, beat Florida State, but for a bad call. Didn't matter. After that, the bottom fell out, and I think that was because of Florida State's new quarterback, Everett Golson.
Notre Dame's new quarterback.
Notre Dame.
Well, actually, that's right.
I was
He transferred.
right.
He's transferred.
And that's why he's gone. So I think they're going to be a lot better with Malik Zaire at quarterback.
So
that's why I think that they have the potential to make a run for that final fourth spot. Same thing with Georgia Tech. You look at their last season. They almost beat Florida State. 3 of their last 4 victories were against top 20 opponents. They have the triple read option. They're running on one of the best quarterbacks, with one of the best running quarterbacks in the country right now. They are a team to watch, and they are being underestimated right now. I think Georgia Tech will ultimately prevail, and that will propel them into the top 10 in the national conversation.
Wow.
That means Notre Dame's going to be out of the picture early.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting for college football, though, because every game is really so exciting.
I mean, none of us said it, but I mean, with 2 top 5 teams in a lot of the rankings, the Iron Bowl right now is really going to be a huge one if you look at that.
That is.
I think right now Auburn's the favorite, depending on how
Absolutely.
Alabama
I got to
comes
go
out.
with you because they have the better quarterback right now.
We'll see. Gotta love
It's
it.
been patient, too.
But now we're going to
releasing
switch gears a little to baseball. As baseball's dog days of August wind down, the pennant races are heating up, and both the Yankees and Mets are in the thick of the divisional races in the AL and NL East. What is the likelihood of the Yankees and Mets winning out? Our panel weighs in with their thoughts. Steve, start us off. How do you see things playing out for each team?
I think the Yankees, and this I think will be very close, I think they will hang on and hold on to first place, mainly because of their pitching, which I never thought I would say. But
I'm hopeful that'll
Nathan Eovaldi, first of all, is having the year of his life at 13-2. And
He's getting a ridiculous amount of runs.
He is.
His ERA is over 4.
But you know what? He was pitching a no-hitter going into the 6th inning yesterday.
He knows how to win, Jay. He knows the situation. Give him some credit.
He has finally developed a pitch to get people out, and that is his splitter. He throws literally 100 miles an hour, and he was doing it yesterday. And when you look at the fact that Pineda will be coming back in September, and Tanaka's been good, even though I think eventually he may need Tommy John. Even CC Sabathia, and he was awful most of the year, is starting to pitch better. But their lineup is the other reason they're going to win. I think when you look at A-Rod, who's having an incredible year of 25 home runs, Teixeira, who's come back from the dead, literally, McCann, who's having a terrific year, Beltran, who has 13 home runs, this lineup never stops hitting. So The Toronto Blue Jays have a great lineup, but what they're lacking is the relief pitching, the bullpen. They don't have quite as good a bullpen, and they're relying on a 20-year-old guy as their closer, and that's Roberto Osuna.
Get to the Mets. You know you want to talk about your own Mets. Come on.
I do.
Leave the Yankees to me.
All right. As for the Mets, I think they will hold on. It will be a little closer than the Yankees, and the reason why I say that...
Really?
Yeah. I think the Nationals are going to have one last push, especially if they get Denard Span back, which I hear they may get him back. They put Jason Worth in the front of the lineup, and he's starting to produce. So I think the pressure is on the Mets, but they need to get their bullpen straightened out. And
Can you get rid of Bobby Parnell, please?
They've sort of done it by putting him on the DL. And if Steven Matz, who they may put in the rotation in September, can come back, he might use him in the bullpen on the days he doesn't start, and that might solve the left-handed problem out of the bullpen.
I'm thinking that Toronto's going to overtake the Yankees because they made the right moves at the opportune times. Look at the way Price is pitching for Toronto
been fantastic.
right now. Yankees did not make a move like that. They're relying. I hope it works out, of course, but their strength has been
great.
The middle of the lineup production, which has surprised everybody from the beginning of the year, led by the guys from the glory days. Well, Teixeira and then A-Rod, who, he's actually reversing a role. He's coming through in those more difficult spots than he did in the past. That grand slam the other day when it was 4-1 to take the lead 5-4. That's not the A-Rod that I used to see up there looking like a little leaguer at balls passing him by. Extremely impressive. And on the other end with the Mets, I'm thinking they're the ones, they've maintained the lead all year against Washington. I just think they're going to be able to maintain that separation. I like their six-man rotation. I think that's innovative. I like the way it rests the pitchers. I think it could serve as a model for other teams who just want to pick up that extra sixth staff member.
I got to agree with you, Sean. I think the Mets are actually, barring the total collapse that Steve fears every year, they're doing well.
I do.
Here's the thing, though. I think they're going to walk away. Washington is 16-25 since July 1. They're going in the opposite direction, despite an MVP season from Bryce Harper. The Mets have finally added some legitimate Major League bats.
Thank God.
Cespedes, Uribe, put some pop in that order, lengthening in it, giving the best starting rotation in baseballs. No longer asked to sue for lack of run support.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing that I think is going to push them over. If David Wright does return in September, you're going to have the emotional win one for the Gipper type moment that I think is going to push them over. The Yankees, on the other hand, are going to, in my mind, have the tougher road. The offense has carried them. I agree with you guys 100%. I mean, Teixeira looked done in after 2014.
Really
31 homers, 79 RBI this year. Rodriguez was the great unknown coming into the season. 25 homers, 67 RBIs. And Brian McCann looked very uncomfortable last season.
Yeah, he did.
This year, 20-on-1 homers, 74 RBI. They're doing the job. They're being the offense we did not expect from them. I mean, they're getting the usual good season from Gardner, but these guys are driving in runs. The issue for me, I disagree with you, Steve. The starting rotation can be competent. That competency hasn't been consistent, and that's something they can ill afford with 6 games remaining against the Blue Jays, a team they're 4-8 against this year, who's gone from least to beast in the NL East with the acquisition of Tulowitzki and Price. The Yankees have a 6-18 winning percentage at home, which bodes well. They have 25 of their remaining 43 games at home. That's almost 60%. And in my opinion, that 60%, that's the likelihood of how I have them winning the division. 60%.
Okay.
Well, that music means it's time for the 3-minute warning. Sean, lead us off.
Recently, it was reported on the front page of the New York Times that 2 employees for the New York Jets were in the fight off the field of play in a locker room where one had his jaw broke to the point he required surgery. It appears that the supervisor for the employees, or coach as they call him, was quoted in the Times as indicating the blow that caused the injury was a sucker punch. To me, that sounds like a felony assault was reported on the front page of the world's leading newspaper. Yet there has been no serious inquiry into criminal charges. The local police department has indicated that they will only pursue charges if they can get a complaint from the victim. From this, I can only conclude that athletes are now officially a special class of American workers immune from the criminal law. I know that if I tried to clear up the same type of issue, unpaid expenses in my work environment, and my breaking of a coworker's facial structure made the front page of a newspaper, I would surely get a visit from the NYPD and would still be sitting in Rikers Island right now. Now, Jay, don't you owe me $50?
Frank Gifford, one of the NFL's treasures, the erudite, cool, diplomatic man who seemingly blended in perfectly with his good buddy, Dandy Don Meredith, and of course, the uniquely unforgettable Howard Cosell. Most Most of us remember this trio that starred on ABC Monday Night Football, but the brilliant legacy of Frank Gifford started well before the 70s. He made his mark at the University of Southern California, running for 841 yards on 195 carries in his senior year. His excellence continued as a running back, defensive back, and as wide receiver for the New York Giants. His team won the NFL championship in 1956, and he was the game's MVP. He made 8 Pro Bowls and had glittering pro records, including 3,609 rushing yards, 367 receptions for 5,434 yards, and 43 touchdowns, and culminated his playing career by making the Hall of Fame in 1977, while having his famed number 16 retired and being beloved by the Mara family. Gifford will always be a talented, classy figure who will be well remembered. He was a true superstar who should never be forgotten.
Amen, Steve.
Thank you.
Steelers linebacker James Harrison has always been a player that you either love, if he's on your team, or love to hate if he's not. That goes for both his play and his mouth. He recently set social media ablaze when he posted a photo on his Instagram page of the sports participation trophies his sons brought home and said he was sending them back. Quote, "These trophies will be given back until they earn a real trophy." He went on to say that he's, quote, "not about to raise 2 boys to be men by making them believe they are entitled to something just because they tried their best, because sometimes your best is not enough, and that should drive you to want to do better, not cry and whine until somebody gives you something to shut you up and keep you happy." Now, I understand 100% where Harrison is coming from, and I 98% agree with him. Participation trophies, in my humble opinion, diminish the real trophies given to winning teams or athletes in a given competition. Granted, sports are supposed to be an escape from the real world, even for kids, so not wanting to slap them in the face with life's harsh realities is understandable. But that being said, besides being that escape and providing fun and exercise, sports, especially team sports, also teaches kids skills that will benefit them later in life. So if you want to give them something just for being there, how about a team, league, or event t-shirt espousing those skills? Positive values for them to take with them as they grow. I bet even James Harrison would get behind that.
I think we all know I'm not a big Tom Brady fan. But speaking completely objectively, his continuing to beat a dead horse with his appeal process of Deflategate is getting ridiculous.
Absolutely.
The appeal clearly isn't going anywhere, as both sides are refusing to budge. The NFL won't agree to a settlement unless Brady admits having knowledge of the balls being deflated, and he refuses to do so. Nothing new has come to light to help his case, and we're getting really close to the September 4th deadline. His ongoing attempts to delay and ultimately dismiss his suspension are just making him look like a petulant child. An independent arbiter found him guilty according to the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, and the league handed down a punishment. Look, I'm not naive. I know there's more than a little cheating going on in the league. But Tom, you got caught. Yes, it sucks. And if you're the Patriots, yes, it hurts. But instead of whining about it and blaming everyone else, shut up, take your punishment like a man, and sit out the 4 games.
Yeah.
All right.
For Jay Kaplan, Steve Ferguson, and Sean Roman, I'm Nisa Petrilli. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us. We'll see you on September 3rd for another edition of On the Sports Lines. Remember, if you want to see this show again or catch up on any of the ones you might have missed, check us out at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And check out our blog at onthesportslines.blogspot.com. Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.